what I found very common is you have those free profiles when it comes to adopting a new tech. You have the people who are very enthusiastic about technology. Yes, let's do it and bring it. And these are, I call them the supporters. They're very inclined to adopt technology. They're like, once you tell them what it is, they'll just jump in and like understand. And then you have the second people where they're neutral. They're not like supporting, but they're very slow to adopt a new technology because they still see a potential risk or disruption of how they're working or the status quo of how they're currently working. But then you have the very old school, which these are like see significant risks and not only in adopting the technology itself, but disrupting the way they work and also disrupting their own jobs. And maybe it will be a risk on their jobs too. They're always like very scared tech will replace me and like, no, 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 no. You'll see those three people and you have to be very mindful when you're identifying a technology that you're going to adopt, that you will see those three and how you're going to manage the three profiles of the team or people across your teams to make sure that, you know, this is adopted across and you can manage those challenges accordingly.
Yes, I really like the point that, like you rightly pointed out, that the legal tech developments that are happening are not just restricted to the contract space. You pick up any domain, like, there's so much development happening. And this is just like, the technology can bring in, because when the initial legal tech was started, it was the legal databases like LexisNexis, Manupatra, and all of that. And then eventually, we started seeing products around the contract space. We are seeing, like you mentioned, matter management, and there are a bunch of other things that are happening even in the discovery stages and all of that. So I think it's just about seeing the processes that can be automated, or where there is a lot of inefficiency when a manual person is doing it. But the moment we are able to identify that as a business or as an organization, these are the challenges that we are facing, that even though there is not a particular product available, we sure can develop processes or implement technology around it to ensure that those things are streamlined, at least at our end. So that's very well put. And
I can't agree more. And I'll be very honest. We always think it's too complex and we shouldn't do this shouldn't do this, or we think it's a big project and it will need a lot of time. So we even hold ourselves back to not doing this just because it's going, but it's not. You really have to identify your quickest wins. I call them, because you,
and we
at the
all
end
have
of
to
the day,
start from
whether
somewhere.
you're a law firm, you're a business, you need to be profitable.
Right.
If you're an in-house, I wouldn't say you're a cost center. I don't like to cost like that. But you, at the end of the day, serve a business, and that
Right.
business needs to be fast and needs to be able to be profitable. So if you hold them back, that's not you doing your job.
Correct. And you have to start from somewhere. I mean, you cannot expect that, once everything is there, everyone is on board, then only we'll implement it. So completely agreed. And I mean, since both of you mentioned that, you have been using a bunch of products, you've seen the transition, and I mean, the kind of experience you both have, like you've seen the when everything was done manually and now technology is helping so much to, automate a lot of work. So how has been your, experience through this transition? Like, do you think legal tech has actually helped your team to work more efficiently and effectively? Do you see any like significant impact on overall productivity and profitability? Ahmed, you want to share
Yeah,
your
I think
insight?
in terms of profitability and productivity, that's the main objective actually of adopting the legal technology. When we talk about legal technology, we are talking about investment, and any law firms would not do such investment unless, of course, there is much more productivity and accordingly profitability. And therefore, the law firms at some stage have decided to make such investment. Possibly the investment could be higher than now, or possibly lower. That's something which may differ from one legal technology tool to another. However, I mean, in relation to the examples we have given about automation of documents, we are talking here about tens of documents that can be produced during one day. Whereas if a lawyer do it manually, he can do possibly 2 to 5, maximum during a day. And then even when we talk about, drafting this manually, the lawyer has to share it with the other party. Now, the other party, if they are adopting similar technology, it should be much more quicker and faster. And therefore, I think the whole process of reviewing those documents, of preparing them from A to Z until they are finalized and then signed, becomes shorter. That means it is more profitable. Productivity has increased of the lawyers, because the lawyers, they can be utilized, they can be doing something different in other transactions, by way of example. And that's why I believe the automation has become a very, very strong tool. And even when it comes to competition itself between law firms, the law firm which has adopted this technology, they can produce more documents, they become more profitable, their lawyers become more productive. So that's really, there is no option for the law firms not to adopt this technology in order to be competitive. And therefore, we are seeing actually most of the international law firms adopting the same, more or less at, I think, same time. That's when we talk about, of course, automation of documents. When it comes, because what does automation of documents means, you create a template, the template is ready, then you just insert the name of the parties, or the details that often changes, and then it produces automatically. You don't need to go clause by clause, because a template has already been created. Once the document is created, it comes to signing. Historically, companies, law firms used to send the documents, outside, the country or inside the country. Possibly somebody needs to take it, or they send it by courier. Again, here we are talking about time. Documents get missing, a lot of frustration, deadlines sometimes, you name it, a lot of issues around it. With the legal technology, with the DocuSign, now they can, sign it online. It's very quick, done on the same day, wherever you are, whether you are in US, UK, Asia, Africa, Middle, where we are. That makes the life is much easier. And with DocuSign, the signatures, are recognized, documents are enforceable. Again, I think that's a big change, because, even with signing, when we talk about legal industry, such signatures needs to be sometimes notarized and legalized by relevant bodies. And again, this takes, a lot of time. Really, the new technology, I think they have shortened this period. The parties are much more comfortable using the legal technology. As I said, the main thing is that all parties actually adopting the same, and it has become a necessity for everybody who is in the industry to adopt the same. Otherwise, he is left behind. And there is no, as I say, there is no way, of course, not to adopt it. During the pandemic, by way of an example, the legal technology tools enables us to work remotely. And as we are in the office, in front of our PCs, having all the technology tools in front of us, we can access it, working in a very normal way. And actually, during the pandemic, law firms generally, they have seen increased in the productivity and profitability. And that gives you an indication how, using the legal technology tools could be more productive and profitable. So we have something, an evidence in, which we experienced during the last 2 years or 3 years.
Right, right. And this is a very valid point. Like, the major difference between a general counsel, like, a in-house counsel team and a law firm is like general counsels usually lack the resources that a law firm has. And yet, having an insight where you need to have technology, because there will always be a limitation as to how much work can be done by the resources. So even if like you have no dearth of resources, like still there will be an issue of the productivity, or there will be an issue that will exist, that how much work those humans are able to do. So unless and until you're adopting to the technology, you will have that limitation to scale up, because say you have 100 people on board, you will be able to do worth X amount of work. So the moment you adopt technologies, those 100 people can do 2x can get the revenue of 2x, which in turn is beneficial to the organization. That is, aptly put. Uh, Coming to
Yeah.
user,
Very much, Tushar. I totally agree with you.
yes. Coming to
And
you,
yeah,
user, yes,
to add to that point, clients, if we talk from their perspective, they expect law firms as well to be more efficient
correct.
and more valuable. Yeah.
Right. And plus, like also, that how technology has changed, like, because you mentioned DocuSign, completely agreed. Like, sitting in, your office, you can ask one party sitting in US and the other party in Oman, or third party in India. Like, all of them can just execute this agreement right at that second, which used to take months. You have to send one document to one place, then it would be couriered again, then you have to send it to the second party, then to the third party, and that cycle would keep on doing. But very similar to that, and which is something that a lot of people don't include it in legal tech, but like in general, using technology, how easy it has become for us to just interact with each other. Like, having a video call, we are able to do this session without having to travel anywhere else. Like, these are the kind of comforts that the technology has been able to provide to our everyday working, irrespective it's a law firm, it's a business. Like, these are the small changes that are happening on a day-to-day basis.
True, true. With the people, of course, being, I believe, more focused. If you travel today, to Dubai or coming to Oman, you take the flight, then you go to the hotel and you get prepared. All of this, I think, increases just the pressure on the
It
person. Um, so
it,
yeah,
it
I think it
does.
can.
It does, by the way. I'll give you a very simple example. I've not so prior to the pandemic, I've been traveling a lot to client meetings in person. And it was very common to do those 1 day flights, right, Ahmed? So you go to Oman in the morning, you come back in the evening. These were very common. Now, for 4 years now, I didn't have to do that because we're meeting online. Everything is finished online. Everyone is having a tool to meet online. And I think the moment I had one meeting back in Feb to meet a client in person for like an RFP, and surprisingly, it was something that I had to question myself: how was I productive back then?
Right.
It's such a long time you have to spend in the airport, a long of time you have to prepare for that meeting, exit that meeting, go back to the airport. I mean, that entire day, I'll be very honest, I could have easily worked on many other matters. I mean, as much as some people think that working remotely is I wouldn't say negative, but they don't like it, they don't appreciate it. But in fact, we're probably a lot of times we're working much more just because that time you have to spend to commute back and forth to a place or a meeting or something, you're probably working during those hours and just finishing much more just because technology enabled you to do something or meet people or finish something online. Then you had to just, I'm not saying like it's either or, don't get me wrong, because it technology will not replace a lot of the things that we have to do in person. It's just enabling you to do more work in little time than how we used to do it in the past.
Correct. 100% agreed. Because like technology cannot at any point of time replace lawyers. Like, it's all about striking that balance, like which is suiting us, what are our requirements, and then accordingly implementing those things at our end. And like all these things actually end up making your organization profitable, more productive, and end up contributing more to the business rather than, just like getting here and there or just doing repetitive basic mundane tasks. So that is absolutely there.
I mean, that shouldn't be our jobs as in-house lawyers doing the exact same thing every day. That's one thing. If there's a tool that can help me do the repetitive work, then why not? So I
Correct.
can actually focus as a lawyer on the things that needs my attention and my skills. The same when it comes to the junior lawyers. As much as they need mentorship, you can enable them have the access to the data instead of, like, I expect when I deal with my law firms too, that they would be responsive. If every lawyer will have to go through the same exact exercise to research a matter that they may have already advised another client to, that's
Mhm.
not being efficient. That
Correct.
means even if they're going to bill me, that's great, but I need them to be responsive, which means they have to be able to have access to the data. Data means that they have a portal, a knowledge management system that allows them to research a lot of stuff. That's again technology. That's why I think you have to identify exactly what you need as a division to be able to succeed. And Microsoft Teams can be a very simple thing. Do I need to be going in-person meetings, or can something as Microsoft Teams or Zoom help me meet people online so I can do a lot of stuff, other stuff online, like, in that time. And these are the simple things legal tech is such a huge word. We think it's a huge adoption, but think about the simple things such as DocuSign, a, a tool that enables you to meet people online, that can help you do the other stuff with much more focus and save you your time. Maybe you need to spend it with your family. That's okay
Correct.
too.
Correct. And especially when lawyers are, like across the world, one thing that is common is that lawyers struggle with the work-life balance. So having any extra time in hand definitely helps. Definitely helps. And yeah, and I mean, it need not be a complicated technology that you need to adopt. It's all about on the use case basis. Like on day one, a new fresh law firm which is starting not necessarily have to incorporate something which costs them a bomb. Like they can just start by having a practice in place which ensures that whatever their initial things are, they're able to streamline it. There is an SOP in the place so that they're able to work more efficiently. And even if a new person joins in, like it becomes the transition, or like when they're joining in the organization, that entire process is very simple. They're able to get access to the all the resources that has been, or like whatever research that has been done by the previous people, because it makes no sense to keep on doing the same thing again and again. So that is really true. But one thing that I want to touch upon is that you rightly pointed out in the first question that you can there are three types of people, like one are supporters, one are neutrals, whereas there is a category which are old school or who are not that tech friendly. Like they have their apprehensions, they feel that there could be like the technology is not going to help us, it will just like they have their reasons to not trust the technology. So working, I'll pick it up first with you, Yosa. Like working in an organization from the GC perspective, like how do you tackle these kind of things? Like how do you simplify that adoption, vis-a-vis uh, having all kinds of people?
You have to identify the challenges first before you identify what you need to adopt. I mean, there will be challenges when it comes to the technology itself. When you're introducing a new technology or product, there will always be risks. So the successful adoption will be that you identify exactly how the benefits of adopting this will outweigh the risks that will actually come with that, so you can actually mitigate that. So if you want to convince another business unit to help you adopt the tech, you need to make sure that you show them the benefits, you show them the value, and that value will outweigh the risks that will come with that technology. I think the other thing you have to think about is the value. The value awareness across the board will play a crucial role in differentiating a lot of the things that you need to adopt. I mean, how this will help you be more productive, how will that help your team be uh, more from a perspective that you're achieving more. So how can you show the value of that product to the broader teams, whether from finance, whether from business, so they can help you adopt that tech. At the end of the day, there will be financial challenges when it comes to the costs and who's going to own that operational cost, and how this technology, when you adopt it, will not be a burden. In fact, it will save the company or the business on the long term, and how you can show that. So you need at the end of the day to talk the language of the business, which is profit. How can this help and fit in the bigger picture of you being a productive team that can be a profitable team as well? What this will be, the value. I think the value is another thing. The utilization. Two major factors is how complex that tech will be, whether you as a team will only use it, or there will be other teams across the board will have access to that tool. Let's say say it's a workflow system, or it's a contract management system where if you approve something, then it goes back to the business unit that raised that request. So you have to think about the complexity, whether it's user friendly or not. How quick can someone learn using that system? That's another thing to think about. The risk, I think you have to think about the function part of the risk, like how this will fit in the bigger function, whether it's going to cause any business disruption, whether you're adopting that system, how it's going to fit in the bigger tools that you're using as well. And you have to think about the social risk, how this will impact the broader team, and how long they will need to like adopt. Again, that brings it to my earlier point, how many you have as very enthusiastic to adopt the technology, how many you think will be very neutral, and how many will be pushing back and very old school, because you have to understand the social part of the risk, how the teams are going to adopt that. um, Return on investment, I think I really touched on that point, where how this will fit in the bigger picture of the business. Again, how this will be be a profitable tool for you. um, Organizational challenges, you have to think, will this have an impact on how your team is structured at the moment, how the business is structured at the moment? Will this impact any of your reporting structures as well? And one thing I found would normally be very useful, and from talking to other people, is stakeholder alignment, is how your tool can be very productive to you, but is it aligned to how other teams are working? Is it aligned to how other teams are measured? Does it align to their own KPIs too? Because the last thing you want to do is have a tech tool that serves you as a team, but at the end of the day, it doesn't fit the other teams or business units KPIs. So those teams will actually push back on that tool because it doesn't fit their KPIs. So you want to make sure you have the alignment with the stakeholders that will have an impact on them too. And I think one thing I'd mention as well is the, the culture and the processes. I mean, adopting technology often requires changing how things are done. It may require change in the culture that the organization is working, whether on a business unit level or maybe or a wider level. So the culture is another risk to manage, or something to think about when you're facing those things. Habits, I think that's a psychological challenge we always miss. We're we're habit creatures. Humans are creatures of habit. We wake up every day, we go to work, we finish work, we stay with family. Every and each one of us has their own habits. So how can you move and ensure that people are like being able to, you're not disrupting them entirely, but able to fit in that tool or system into their own habits and their own traditional ways of working. So you have that psychological way of people agreeing or adopting that tool and not push back, because you can easily bring a tool, but will people adopt it and use it? You don't want to face that resistance. So how you can fit that. And I think one last thing is the perception. Whenever you initiate change, it's normal and it's human nature that people will have to think. So how can you make sure people understand the process, an idea, and how this again will fit in their bigger picture? Because human nature by nature are, they will question everything. As much as they love it and understand it, they want to understand how this will fit in their own perception, their own questions. So make sure you also have that in mind as a psychological challenge when you're thinking about adopting a new tool.
No, there are two couple of very good points which I want to touch upon. One is the habits. I completely align with it. Like, one thing that we have seen, even like, when we are pitching our product to our clients, like everyone just loves it. Like, while proofreading, they get everything there in the Microsoft Word itself, they get that idea. But still, because we are tuned to do something day in, day out, and we are doing it since eternity, like, more or less everyone has spent 10 years, 15 years working a particular way. Now, suddenly, if there is a new tool that comes in and it tells you that, it's fine, like, what you were doing, you were spending 2 hours, 3 hours per document. Now you can just get all that information readily available. And then suddenly you have to change the way you do, because now you're not just reading through the agreement, you're looking at the, results that are there. And then suddenly, where your initial instinct is that let me go through the entire agreement to identify the errors, now it has changed to let me see the results given by some other tool. So that is a drastic shift from, because it requires a lot to be trusted, like, that product needs to be trusted so that I don't have to go through the entire agreement again. And that is something that a lot of people understand, like, it takes a while, like, you have to be patient with them, you have to make them understand. Once they do it over the course of time, again, like, once their habit A changes to habit B, then that is the transition that is happening, which is something which I like, we have also seen happening a lot in the industry. And also, like, one thing which really may, like, I never thought it that ways, was that a lot of times introduction of a tool can hit certain KPIs of the individuals, and if that is being impacted, they would not like it. Like, there will always be a pushback as to adoption of that technology. That is really a good insight.
When you work with a bigger team, you'll see a lot of times that your KPIs as legal may not necessarily be the same KPIs on another team and another team and another team. And in many times those KPIs conflict. So if you're
Right.
introducing one other tool, I've seen it. It's not about the pushback. It's that it brings their KPIs to another level, or it doesn't even serve them. So why would they actually adopt it? Like, literally, if you
True.
ask me, like, they don't see a
True.
value out of it.
Absolutely. That completely makes sense. I completely agree with it. And that's a really insightful from the GC perspective. Ahmed, coming back to you, like, how has been, like, what has been your take? Like, because you already are using a lot of legal tech tools. What have you done at your end to simplify the adoption? Like, did you also, got a lot of pushback? Why we are doing it? We were just doing fine before this also, or like the transition has been completely smooth?
Yeah, generally, Tushar, you would have pushbacks whenever you introduce a new technology, because that means learning. And it is the last thing which generally, people generally, and lawyers in particular, want to learn, given, of course, their busy schedule first. Plus, they have got used to do things in a certain way, or possibly using a legal technology tool, which either has been replaced or has been developed to a newer version with the new features, which means you need to learn the new features. Uh, the legal technology, it's a continuous process, as you know, and every year or 2 years there is an upgrade to a newer version, and that, of course, dictates to us as organizations, as lawyers, how we operate. We need to ensure that there is the right training, the right education to the lawyers, but it's not often the case as smooth as it can be. With the pushbacks, of course, the old lawyers is difficult. We still have, big portion of the lawyers who, don't feel comfortable using these legal technologies, and they rely possibly on younger lawyers or the support staff to to assist them in that. And you would have this number of old lawyers who possibly really difficult to adopt to the new technology. That's something which I think acceptable now, and the what we need to ensure is that younger lawyers, actually, who are possibly much more friendly to using the legal technology, and easily adapted to the new technology, to ensure that at least the majority of them use it. Um, the younger lawyers, they have been using the legal technology the way we see it more efficiently, generally, across the market. And I think the older lawyers, when they come closer to to retirement, I don't think this number will be very high. Sure. A lot of lawyers will adapt to the new technologies generally. But as I said, I mean, this is a continuous process, and it will cause challenges, especially to the management, to ensure that this is implemented in the right way, and to reflect it as well in the KPI, because so by the end of the year you can see which lawyer has attended, and then they have start using these tools, because if they don't use it, this could be orchestrated to be a loss to the firm, given that they have invested in this legal technology and it's not used or adopted in the right manner. And that's, I believe, one again of the things which needs to be monitored very closely by the management. And usually it is done, I mean, differs from one firm to another, every on monthly basis, quarterly basis, or however they want to do it. But I believe it is essential to keep a close eye on how these legal technology tools are used generally, and to what level it has taken the firm, the productivity and profitability to the next level that they intend, of course, to reach.
Correct, correct. And I think this is one very interesting way to look at it, is that, rather than implementing every, across the platform, like, it is better to push it through the supporters. Like, when you have people who are tech friendly, you tell them that, okay, this is the benefit. They would be more than happy to try it out. And if it is really helping them, then they will also talk about it in the office. And probably that would, once everyone is talking about that, how easy it has become, like how that particular process has been simplified using so and so tool, that would also, I think, to an extent, pacify the people who are sort of receptive, and maybe they can also start using that particular tool over the course of time. So I think that can also work well.
One of the things, again, to Shab, which we have identified here, we work in two languages, unlike in the West or somewhere where they possibly work in one language, and two languages. We need to ensure that with these legal technology tools, their features, they enable English as well as Arabic, because with the Arabic speaking lawyers, sometimes it involves preparing documents in Arabic, which needs to be filed with the relevant authorities. And again, I mean, it's about the features themselves in the legal technology tools to ensure that that's something which is enabled.
Great, great. No, that absolutely makes sense. Now, one more thing that I wanted to touch upon was that, like we're discussing the social, application, that social concerns that may be there, the challenges that people are, like, sometimes people are receptive, all these kind of concerns are there. But one thing that I wanted to ask you, like, while adopting to legal tech, like, is there any specific regulatory or ethical concern as well? Or it's just, whatever suits your need, you can use it? I would like to take, hear you, Ahmed, first, and then we'll come to this.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, with the legal technology, they can be used remotely. They can save sometimes data, and those data, some of them possibly could be personal, if it relates to individual, or it relates to, certain matters. And therefore, from a regulatory perspective, I think some of these type of data are to be protected, actually protected by law, and consent will need to be obtained in order to, transfer them possibly outside the country, where possibly the main office is outside the country, in order to process those data. It applies both to the employees as well to the clients. And I think that's one of the challenges from a regulatory perspective that need to be ensured that it complied with. Again, in relation to the privacy, in relation to anything which is relating to an employee working outside the country, Any video recordings, any images, anything of this type needs again to ensure that the consent of the owner of this data will need to be obtained. We are seeing this increasingly happening with the use of legal technology tools. Sometimes this is not taken into consideration and may end up in, of course, breach of or violation of some laws. How to mitigate it? Possibly, to consider before adopting any legal technology. How does it work? Does it have any implications on the people, on the data, how they work, how they operate, and then come up with the right solution, either incorporated in the terms, incorporated in the respective employment contracts, but there must be something which ensure that where consent is required is actually pre-obtained. Before that, I know when it is, of course, organizations rushing to adopting a new technology, and this is done through various departments, including IT departments and other departments. It's all missed these type of points, and in order to ensure it's always involved the relevant compliance team within the organization. We have an internally compliance team. We ensure that this is all complied with.
Right. And Yosser, what about you? Like, do you feel there are any regulatory ethical concerns while you're adopting to any technology?
I think the region is definitely moving very fast in terms of adopting technology, but the laws the regulations are still like little, I wouldn't say little behind, but they're not keeping the same pace. But we're seeing a lot of change, I think, regarding that. But I think you, as legal, as lawyers, given that we manage data, you have to always think, especially if you manage work across jurisdictions, how the data will be used, because you're at the end of the day handling data across jurisdictions with how the data will be managed, how it will be processed, whether they're personal data or not. All of those sort of things are still like vary between countries, and therefore maybe in some countries they're not even answered. You have to consider that because it's important. Technology saves us time, but you have to understand the risk that lies underneath it to make sure that there's no way that you can avoid that risk, but how you can manage it and make sure it's an informed decision when you're adopting that technology. You have to think about the practical risks in addition to regulatory risks as well when it comes to that. So what happens if data breach, or if there's leak of confidential information? All of those sort of things you have to think about when it comes to like the ethical or regulatory part of the tool. And then I think you keep learning during the process once you adopt the technology. I mean, the technology is changing, but the laws are also changing in a variety of sectors. And we're seeing this across, at least in our region, across the Middle East. You're seeing more countries adopting more data privacy laws, for example. And one thing we've seen in Saudi, where there has been a requirement at the beginning to data residency, then because there's been a lot of, I wouldn't say pushback, but there are a lot of opinions from tech companies that maybe we need to change that. And the regulator actually took that in consideration, and now they made those requirements a little bit more practical on how we can move data across jurisdiction. So I think it's something to keep in mind when you're adopting technology, because at the end of the day, we're the lawyers, right? We have to make sure that we take informed decisions, and our jobs as lawyers or GCs is make sure that when we're doing this, it's informed decisions. We're not taking decisions that we can't avoid risk. We will never avoid risk. It's more or less how can those decisions are more informed, so we understand the risk that underneath that.
Understood. And one thing that I also wanted to discuss was that I feel that pandemic turned out to be a blessing in disguise for legal tech. Like, when, like we were discussing, right? Like, I mean, 3 years back, we could not have imagined that, we can like do a lot of meetings online. Like everything was in person. No lawyer would have thought that they can work from home as well, because we had all the information available in the offices, and because of all that concern. So like, overall, like that was the time when more or less everyone agreed upon that, how important technology is. They all started realizing the value of it. Now things are opening up. But do you think this, because a lot of talk is happening around the recession as well, do you think that this period could also be something similar to how pandemic turned out to be for technology? Because if you have to take a broader eye view, like you were talking about the experience of you having to do a daily trip for the work related matters. Now imagine a meeting that could have been done online. Instead of that, you have to take a flight, you have to travel to the airport, then from the airport to the office, then come back to the airport, take that flight again, and then like you end up spending the entire day traveling. Money gets spent, and that in turns affect the profitability and all that stuff. So do you think that recession could also be something very important for people to understand the utility of the legal tech, and it can in turn it can bring further boost to the adoption of it? Yosef, would love to hear your
Ab-
thoughts on this.
Absolutely. That's, I think, generally speaking, yes. You're seeing more companies adopting technology. You're seeing more businesses very lean and very open to have meetings online, which you wouldn't have seen that in the past. I mean, I work in a region where I support various types of businesses, right? And you have to think that at least on the government side, that was not common. If you go and tell a client that you're meeting them online, that's not even an option on the table. That's now possible. And that's great. That's an entire mind shift on how we can do our work more efficiently. In fact, many clients are now the ones requesting that, and I would say that's great. You have to think about it from attending events as well. The way that we manage to share information and share experiences and adopting technology to allow us to attend events online, to allow us to attend share information online, to get to learn from each other globally, just because we no longer have to travel but instead attending a lot of things online irrespective of the time zone. That's again one way of thinking about technology, of when it comes to the recession and how things are, like how things are changing and how the mindsets are changing, um, at least in this region. I mean, I'll take my story as an example. I am a parent to a kid with special needs. So if you think about it, from 4 years back prior to the pandemic, even asking a company or even saying that you want to work remote, that's not even an option on the table. If it's either you come to the office or you're out of your job, that's at least something you can ask for, that because now it's proven and seen that you can actually do your job efficiently without having to come to office every day. You can meet clients, you can finish work, you can do everything that you need to do without having to be in present. At least, I'm not saying again it's going to replace, but technology helps you do that. So I do think that will increase. I do think that it we'll see more companies adopting that, at least in my own personal view. Seeing my peers across the market, we see more companies are trying to do that. We will see, maybe, I don't know, but I would argue that the pushback will come from the financial part rather than the mindset part. Like people, you have to think about it like, yes, what people want to adopt technology, but how can you bring the budget in and where the budget is coming from? And does it come in legal or come from another department? Maybe we need to bring another department in the picture and let them adopt the technology so we can bring the budget in. All of those things you have to think about it. So I think that will be the challenge that we keep seeing with the recession, and the spend. But maybe you have to think about it like, if we're not traveling and saving the budget, how we can bring the budget into a different area that can save us even more on the long term.
Correct. And also in this aspect, like, one thing that plays a very important role is that when you're able to tell a business that this is the impact that it is going to bring in, and it is like it's a tangible, like, directly in terms of the revenue, that if I'm spending say $100 on this product, but in return I'll get say 200, 250. In that situation, it becomes more relatable to it, and they are able to take a call faster that, whether implementing this would make sense or not, rather than just saying it's going to make my life easy, because then it becomes, then the entire conversation starts going towards, why do you need it? Like, are you not doing things the way that you were doing it? So I think pushing, in case when someone is looking to implement that particular software, like if it goes in the direction that what is the impact that I can bring it with this? Like, if I'm able to quantify the impact that it is there, then in terms of the adoptability, I think it would become a bit easier for even from the financial aspect as well, and which in turn will help in the recession period.
I think you have to think about it long and short term. Maybe on short term it will cost you, but how this will plays in the long term and how this fits in the bigger picture of your organization. You cannot think about it as an individual or just a department. We as legal at the end of the day are part of a business. How this fits in the bigger picture, that's crucial. Otherwise, you will never have the budget. I'm sorry, but you have to be realistic. We're part of a business, and that business needs to understand how this fits in their bigger picture.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Coming to Ahmed, to you, like, because you're managing the entire Oman practice. So, from the management perspective, like, how do you see technology, being put in the recession? Like, do you think you will encourage more technology to be adopted to, or would you feel that, let me take a back seat, let's see how things are developing, and then we'll see how to go about using technology? Like, what would be your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, having looked at our experience, we have the pandemic for 2 years relating to COVID-19. This is a one-off, of course. We had recessions before. And if you look at the possibility of this happening again, although I am trying to be optimistic and positive here, but it may happen at any time. But let's just be frank about it. We're talking about, politically, at political level, at all levels, even the government themselves. Now they consider that their employees that can, work from home. They can work with, different legal technology tools. The country doesn't stop, the company doesn't stop, and nobody stops. Because the last thing you want to do is for your company to stop. You will end up paying salaries without productivity. And this is not a fair reason to terminate employees. If the employer cannot, of course, provide the right legal technology for his employees, to function, to operate in the right manner, and to achieve what is expected to be achieved from them. Because if somebody working from home, possibly not using the legal technology available in the office, possibly the work product or the quality of the work produced will not be the same unless he has access to the same. And back to your question, I see it now. It is, as I said, a necessity. We have learned the lesson the hard way, and I think everybody has learned it the hard way, because COVID came unexpectedly. We didn't know how, what form it will take. We don't know what the decisions of the government will be. I mean, by way of an example, Oman had different decisions from UAE, from Saudi Arabia, from possibly Spain, from other countries, where some countries, went into complete lockdown. Others, permits possibly different sectors like health sectors and education sectors. And we see overall, I mean, and having acting for different clients in different sectors, there is a general, agreement among all, stakeholders, among clients, among companies. It has become necessary to create the right environment using the legal technology tools, to adopt it for employees, to work from wherever they are. And we are seeing a lot of international companies actually trying to make the first move, starting from US, where they are mainly based, and possibly using some of their employees in Africa. And here, not talking about the and how effective it is, to keep the company running, it as well having access to to those individuals with a very good experience who are very highly intellectuals, but they are in countries or jurisdictions where they can't leave it, like Africa, far Asia. And now with the new technology, you can reach very easily to them, and even you can cut costs, because this is again another element, I think, which a lot of companies start looking at. Although this is not possibly relating to the main point, we understand how they will cut costs, because this is all leads to different things, and you start, one way lead to another. Although we don't possibly totally agree, but this is, as a matter of fact, happening. And cutting costs, cutting a number of things. We have call centers in some countries, and they're closing down possibly their operations in one country or another, and it's better utilization. As my colleague Yusuf mentioned, it's better utilization of the resources. Yeah.
Right. No, this is really helpful. I mean, we are nearing towards the end of the webinar. So, I mean, these answers, this was really great insight for me personally. And I'm sure everyone who's listening to this would be able to benefit a lot out of it, a lot out of it. So thank you so much, for joining in. I know you have very busy schedule. But before we wind up, we'll just check if any of the listeners have any questions. We'll just take one or two questions in case there are, and then we'll wind up the session. So in case anyone is having any question, please feel free to put it in the chat.
We will be very happy to answer any questions relating to this topic. I believe this topic, is relevant to everybody and every person and organization.
Absolutely. Irrespective it's a law firm or corporate team. I mean, irrespective even where they're in India, in Middle East, in US, there's the same consistent conversation that is happening. So I'm sure it would be meaningful for everyone, but seems like no one is having any questions. So no worries. I would like to thank you once again, for taking time out from your schedule. Means a lot to us. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rishad. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.